Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Supremely Enlightened One. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya. Meritorious lay disciples, Venerable Bhantes and the Asapura. In the time of the Supreme Buddha, there were many, many wrong ideas about what it means to be pure, what it means to attain the spiritual goal. Just like today. Isn't it true? Nowadays, people have many wrong views about how you achieve something in the spiritual life. In the time of the Supreme Buddha, people believed certain things about how the world worked, about how it was that we had our place in the world. One of those very strong beliefs was that the world was divided into different groups of people, and there were people who could achieve something spiritually, and then there were other people who couldn't. So the Brahmins believed very strongly that they were the only ones that could achieve something in the spiritual world, that the other groups of people, they needed the Brahmins' help, right? That if the kings needed to collect wholesome karma, they had to go to the Brahmins. Don't you remember the stories of when King Pasenadi, he had that terrible, terrible dream, and he went to the Brahmins and said, "What's the meaning of this dream?" And they said, "Oh, it means you have a lot of bad luck. Something terrible is going to happen to you. You need to do this sacrifice. We can plan this sacrifice for you. We'll kill lots and lots of animals. And then, because we do that, because we know how to do that in the right way, we'll help you avoid this bad result that's going to happen to you." A very strange thing when we think about it now, right? Now that we know the Dhamma, to think that people could believe that by killing animals, you could create wholesome karma. But these were very strong beliefs in the time of the Supreme Buddha. But the Supreme Buddha rejected these things completely. And so because of that, he got a reputation that he didn't believe that the Brahmins were the only ones that could attain spiritual goals. In fact, he taught what was really important to achieve something. He taught that we have to have Shraddha in his enlightenment, that we have to believe that he knows the Dhamma and has discovered the way to put an end to this round of samsara. We have to have energy, don't we? That this isn't a goal that we achieve simply by being born into the right family, right, or being lucky. It's something that we have to work very hard at, to remove unwholesome things from our mind, to develop wholesome things. And we have to be wise. We have to develop this wisdom that lets us understand suffering, the cause of suffering, the ending of suffering, and the path that leads to the complete ending of suffering. The Supreme Buddha taught, if someone has these qualities, then they'll be able to achieve real purification, complete purification of the mind. So, today we get to hear a very beautiful sermon from the Supreme Buddha, where he takes away all the arguments that the Brahmins have about why they're the only ones that are special, why they're the best ones in the world. This is the Asalayana Sutta. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living in Savatthi, in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Now at that time, 500 Brahmins from diverse provinces were staying in Savatthi for some business or other. Then those Brahmins thought, this recluse Gotama describes purification for all the 4 castes. Who is there able to dispute with him about this assertion? So, what are the 4 castes? The Brahmins, the nobles, the merchants, and the workers, right? The workers at the very bottom. And the Brahmins felt that they were the ones at the top, and that they were the only ones who were pure, who could achieve purity. But the Supreme Buddha taught something very different. He taught that their beliefs about purity were completely wrong, and that it has to do with the qualities that we have inside, the actions that we do with body, speech, and mind. And that he welcomed people from all the castes into the Sangha. A very, very beautiful simile he gave. He said, just like all the rivers in the world, they flow into the ocean, and once they flow into the ocean, you can't say, here's the Ganges, right? Here's the Yamuna, here's the Mississippi, right? You can't look at the ocean and say that. In the same way, in the Sangha, when people come into the Sangha, they lose their former designations. And they're all just members of the Sangha. They're all just disciples of the Supreme Buddha. And that's the way that we come together here today to listen to the teaching. So these Brahmins were not very happy about this. And so they decided to find someone who could go and debate with the Supreme Buddha. Now on that occasion, a Brahmin student named Asalayana was staying at Savatthi. Young, shaven-headed, 16 years old, he was a master of the 3 Vedas. So even though he was only 16, he had completed his studies. He had learned the holy scriptures of the Brahmins. These are the Vedas. So he was a master of the 3 Vedas with their vocabularies, liturgy, phonology, and etymology, and the histories as a 5th. Skilled in philology and grammar, he was fully versed in natural philosophy and the marks of a great man. So he had completed all of his studies. He knew the scriptures, he knew how to recite the Brahmins' mantras, he knew how to do all these ceremonies that the Brahmins thought were the most important thing for human beings. Then the Brahmins thought, this one, this Asalayana, he'll be able to go and debate with the Supreme Buddha. They didn't call him the Supreme Buddha. They called him the recluse Gotama, right? They didn't believe that he had any special knowledge, any special powers. So then the Brahmins went to him and they said, please, go and debate with the recluse Gotama. You've completed your studies, you know everything that we know. You can have an argument with him and show people that he's wrong and that we're right. But this student didn't want to do it. He had heard about the Supreme Buddha. And this is what he said. Sirs, the recluse Gotama is one who speaks the Dhamma. Now those who speak the Dhamma are difficult to dispute with. I'm not able to dispute with a recluse Gotama about this assertion. But the other Brahmins, they wouldn't take that. They said, no, The recluse Gautama, he's teaching that all 4 castes can attain purity, can attain perfection. This is wrong. You know better. Go and debate with him. And again, for a second time, he said, no, no. This recluse Gautama is one who teaches the Dhamma. And one who teaches Dhamma is very hard to debate with. So he didn't think that he could do it. But again, a third time, the Brahmin said, no, no, go, go. You can change his mind. You can show him that he's wrong. And again, a third time, the student said, I can't do this. The recluse Gautama preaches the Dhamma. It's hard to debate. It's hard to argue with people who preach the Dhamma. But since you're insisting, I'll go ahead and go. So he does agree to go. Then the Brahmin, student, Asalayana, went with a large number of Brahmins to the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side and said to the Blessed One, Master Gautama, the Brahmins say thus, Brahmins are the highest caste. Those of any other caste are inferior. Brahmins are the fairest caste. Those of any other caste are dark. Only Brahmins are purified, not non-Brahmins. Brahmins alone are the sons of Brahma, the offspring of Brahma. So, who is Brahma? A heavenly being. They believed they were actually born from this heavenly being. Brahmins alone are the sons of Brahma, the offspring of Brahma, born of his mouth, born of Brahma, created by Brahma, heirs of Brahma. What does Master Gautama say about that? So he lays out the case. He says Brahmins believe that they're the best, that only they are fair-skinned, other people are dark, right? They care about these very silly things, but they believed it very strongly. So the Supreme Buddha begins with his answers. He says, now Asalayana, the Brahmin women are seen having their periods, becoming pregnant, giving birth, and nursing. So, Brahmin women, they're the ones who give birth to Brahmin babies. And yet those Brahmins, though born from the womb, say thus, Brahmins are the highest caste, those of any other caste are inferior. Brahmins are the fairest caste, those of any other caste are dark. Only Brahmins are purified, not non-Brahmins. Brahmins alone are the sons of Brahma, the offspring of Brahma, born of his mouth, born of Brahma, created by Brahma, heirs of Brahma. So, the very beginning, he shows that what they say isn't true. They're not born from a god. They're just born from other people. But the student, Asalayana, says, even though you say that, still the Brahmins believe. Then the Supreme Buddha says, what do you think, Asalayana? Have you heard that in Yona and Cambodia and in other outland countries there are only 2 castes, masters and slaves, and that masters become slaves and slaves become masters? He says, so I have heard, sir. Then on the strength of what argument, or with the support of what authority, do the Brahmins in this case say thus, Brahmins are the highest caste, and so on, heirs of Brahma? So he says, in other places, there aren't even Brahmins. The most important people are the masters, and they can even switch positions with others. So this world isn't as fixed as you say it is. And then the student says, even though you say that, still the Brahmins believe that they're the best. Then the Supreme Buddha says, what do you think, Asalayana? Suppose a noble were to kill living beings, take what is not given, misconduct himself in sensual pleasures, speak falsely, speak maliciously, speak harshly, gossip, be covetous, have a mind of ill will, and hold wrong views. So he's saying, suppose a noble does all these bad actions with their body, with their speech, and with their mind. On the dissolution of the body after death, would only he be likely to reappear in a state of deprivation, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell, and not a Brahmin? So, if a noble does these things and a Brahmin does these things, is it only the noble that's going to experience the results of his action? Or does everyone experience the results of their actions? The Supreme Buddha says, suppose a merchant does all these things, does these bad actions with body, speech, and mind. Is only a noble going to experience the bad results? If only a worker does these things, and not if a Brahmin does these things? Are Brahmins free from the results of their actions? Can they do whatever they want and never experience suffering because of the harmful things that they do? And the student says, no, Master Gautama. Whether it be a noble or a Brahmin or a merchant or a worker, those of all four castes who kill living beings and so on, and hold wrong views, on the dissolution of the body after death, are likely to reappear in a state of deprivation, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell. So, this is one of the very wonderful things about the teaching of the Supreme Buddha, isn't it? That we all have the possibility to make choices about the actions that we do. That we can learn about breaking the precepts, we can learn about keeping the precepts, and that whoever we are, no matter what family we're born in, if our parents are rich, if our parents are poor, all of us get to experience the results of our actions, whether it's good actions or bad actions. So then the Supreme Buddha says, what do you think, Asalayana? Suppose a Brahmin were to abstain from killing beings, from taking what is not given, from misconduct in sensual pleasures, from false speech, from malicious speech, from harsh speech, and from gossip, and were to be uncovetous, to have a mind without ill will, and to hold right view. On the dissolution of the body after death, would only he be likely to reappear in a happy destination, even in a heavenly world, and not a noble, or a merchant, or a worker? And Asalayana says, no, anyone who does these good actions is going to experience the result. So the Brahmins felt that they had this special power, right, to make these sacrifices, to recite these mantras, to control the world. But the Supreme Buddha shows us, no, each of us, individually, makes these choices about the actions that we do, about the wholesome and unwholesome things that we do with our body, with our speech, and with our mind. And that no matter who we are, we get to experience those results. That we don't have to worry that we're doomed to only experience bad things. That if we have an interest in experiencing good results, in having happiness in the future, in putting an end to this long round of samsara, then we all have the ability to do these wholesome actions, to abstain from these unwholesome actions. So again, the Supreme Buddha asks, then, student, how can you say that the Brahmins are better if you admit that everyone has to experience the results of their actions? But still, the student says, no, still the Brahmins believe. Still the Brahmins believe that they're the best, that they're at the top. Then the Supreme Buddha says, what do you think, Asalayana? Is only a Brahmin capable of developing a mind of loving kindness, towards this region without hostility and without ill will, and not a noble or a merchant or a worker. So here the Supreme Buddha is talking about this very special ability, right, that all of us have, that not just some people, that anyone can work to purify their mind. Anyone can do these meditations, right? Because the Brahmin student says, no. A Brahmin can develop thoughts of loving kindness. A noble, a king, a queen can develop thoughts of loving kindness. A merchant, a worker. Any of us, no matter who we are, have this possibility. Right? If you're a lay person or a monk or a nun, we all have the ability to cultivate wholesome thoughts. Right? Even someone who has a lot of anger in their mind has the possibility to practice these thoughts of goodwill towards all living beings. But again, the Brahmin student still wouldn't admit defeat. He said no. Still the Brahmins say that they're the top. Then the Supreme Buddha says, what do you think, Asalayana? Is only a Brahmin capable of taking a loofah and bath powder, going to the river and washing off dust and dirt, and not a noble or a merchant or a worker? So here the Supreme Buddha, he's saying, what's so special about you Brahmins? Everybody can wash themselves, right? The Brahmins, they believed that they had this special power, right, going down to the river. But the Supreme Buddha says, can't everybody take a bath and make themselves clean? Why do you say that you're so much more pure than everyone else? And the student admits, yes, everyone can go and wash themselves, remove the dirt from their body. And then the Supreme Buddha says, well, then how can you say that you're so pure? Anyone can purify this body by washing it in the same way that Brahmins do. Then, next, the Supreme Buddha says, what do you think, Asalayana? Suppose a head-anointed noble king were to assemble here 100 men of different birth and say to them, come, sirs, let any here who have been born into a noble clan, or a Brahmin clan, or a royal clan, take an upper fire stick of sala wood, salala wood, sandalwood, or padumaka wood, and light a fire and produce heat. So all these kinds of wood, they're very expensive, right? They're very fancy, that people really prize. He says to these nobles and Brahmins, come and make a fire out of these kinds of wood. And also, let any who have been born into an outcast clan, a trapper clan, a wicker workers clan, a cartwright's clan, or a scavenger's clan. So let people from the really lowest groups of people in the world, these lowest occupations, let them take an upper fire stick made from a dog's drinking trough, or from a pig's trough, from a dustbin, or from castor oil wood, and light a fire and produce heat. So this kind of wood, right, it's the very lowest kind of wood. No one grinds up the wood from a garbage can and offers it to people, right? So here we have these two groups, the highest group in society and the lowest group in society. The highest group, they even get to take the best kind of wood and make a fire. And the lowest group, they have to use basically garbage to make a fire. What do you think, Asalayana? When a fire is lit and heat is produced by someone in the first group, would that fire have a flame, a color, and a radiance? And would it be possible to use it for the purpose of fire? So, would it give light? Would it give heat? Could people use it to cook things, to keep themselves warm? While when a fire is lit and heat is produced by someone of the second group, that fire would have no flame, no color, and no radiance, and it would not be possible to use it for the purpose of fire. So, this first group, can their fire do the things that fire is supposed to do? And this second group, this group of low-caste people who are using just thrown away wood to make a fire, is their fire dark? Is their fire cold? Is their fire useless? And the student says, no, Master Gotama. When a fire is lit and heat is produced by someone in the first group, that fire would have a flame, a color, and a radiance, and it would be possible to use it for the purpose of fire. And when a fire is lit and heat is produced by someone in the second group, that fire too would have a flame, a color, and a radiance, and it would be possible to use it for the purpose of fire. For all fire has a flame, a color, and a radiance, and it's possible to use all fire for the purpose of a fire. So, we know that the Brahmins, right, they did a lot of things with fire, didn't they? They worshipped fires. They felt that they were collecting merit by lighting a fire, offering things to it, offering oil, offering ghee, that this is the way to collect wholesome karma, and that they had this special power. So the Supreme Buddha, right, in this example, it's very beautiful. He points out a fire, it's good for making heat, for making light. The Supreme Buddha said that even if somebody were to worship a fire for 100 years, worshipping that fire every day for 100 years, it wouldn't be as beneficial as worshipping someone with a pure mind, with a concentrated mind, someone with wisdom. So the Supreme Buddha, he understood about worshipping. He didn't say that we shouldn't worship things, but he taught us what is worthy of worship, what's not worthy of worship. And he taught that this practice of the Brahmins worshipping fire, useless, doesn't bring any benefit. But even though the Supreme Buddha shows again and again, still, this Brahmin student, he doesn't give up. He says, still, the Brahmins believe that they're the highest. What do you think, Asalayana? Suppose a noble youth were to cohabit with a Brahmin girl, and a son was born from their cohabitation. Should a son born from a noble youth and a Brahmin girl be called a noble after the father, or a Brahmin after the mother? Right? So you can have a Brahmin mother and a noble father, and they can have a baby. So then he says, what do you get? What kind of baby do you get? Right? There can't be that much of a difference. What kind of a baby do you get? And the student says, he could be called both. The child could be called a Brahmin or a noble. And so then the Supreme Buddha switches it. He says, what do you think, Asalayana? Suppose a Brahmin youth were to cohabit with a noble girl, and a son were to be born from their cohabitation. Should the son born from a Brahmin youth and a noble girl be called a noble after the mother, or a Brahmin after the father? And again he says, it could be called both. So then he gives a third example. He says, what do you think, Asalayana? Suppose a mare were to be mated with a male donkey. So, a female horse and a male donkey, and a foal were to be born as the result. Should that foal be called a horse after the mother, or a donkey after a father? Do you know about horses and donkeys? How that works? Have you learned about that in science class? No. Okay. So a horse is one kind of animal, and a donkey is a different kind of animal. But even though they're different kinds of animals, they can mate and have a child. But that child, the Supreme Buddha asks, what would this child be called? And the Brahmin student says, it's a mule. So the mule is the kind of animal that's born from a horse and a donkey. It's a mule, Master Gotama, since it does not belong to either kind. I see the difference in this last case, but I see no difference in either of the former cases. So when a horse and a horse have a child, it's a horse. And when a donkey and a donkey have a child, it's a donkey. But the two are close enough that they can mate, the donkey and the horse. But the child that they have, it's neither one. And that child, it can't have other children. It's stuck there like that. So the Brahmin student admits, no, horses and donkeys, they really are different species, different animals. And that when they mate, they get something completely different. But whereas with human beings, it doesn't matter at all. Humans from any of the castes can be parents with each other and have children. And they're still human beings. Then the Supreme Buddha says, what do you think, Asalayana? Suppose there were two Brahmin students who were brothers, born of the same mother. One studious and acute, so one who worked very hard in school and was very clever, and one neither studious nor acute. Which of them would Brahmins feed first at a funeral feast, or a ceremonial milk rice offering, or at a sacrificial feast, or at a feast for guests? So the Brahmins would offer dana to other Brahmins, similar to how people offer dana to monks. So the Supreme Buddha asks, there are these two Brahmins, they're brothers. One studies hard and is very clever, and one doesn't study very hard and he's not very clever. Who would people want to honor more? And the Brahmin student says, on such occasions, Brahmins would feed first the one who was studious and acute, so the one who studied hard and was clever. For how could what is given to one who is neither studious nor acute bring great fruit? So he recognized, right, that there is a value to learning, right, and being clever. So then the Supreme Buddha gives another scenario. He says, what do you think, Asalayana? Suppose there were two Brahmin students who were brothers, born of the same mother, one studious and acute, but immoral and of bad character, and one neither studious nor acute, but virtuous and of good character. Okay, so you have the two situations. What's the first one? He's clever, he's studied well, but what's not so good about him? Doesn't keep the precepts, does bad things with his body, speech, and mind. He's immoral and of bad character. But the second one, it's switched. He hasn't studied very much. He's not very clever, but he's very virtuous. He doesn't do bad things with his body, speech, and mind. So the Supreme Buddha asks, which of them would Brahmins feed first at a funeral feast, or at a ceremonial milk rice offering, or at a sacrificial feast, or at a feast for guests? And then the Brahmin student says, on such occasions, Brahmins would feed first the one who is neither studious nor acute, but virtuous and of good character, Master Gotama. For how could what is given to one who is immoral and of bad character bring great fruit. So he recognizes, right, the value of doing good actions. And the Supreme Buddha says, first, Asalayana, you took your stand on birth, and after that, you took your stand on scriptural learning. And after that, you have come to take your stand on the very ground that purification is for all four castes, as I describe it. So he began by saying that just because of the family that someone's born into, that makes them the highest. And then later, he was willing to agree that studying, that knowledge, was what made one better. But then eventually, he had to admit that virtuous action, right, is even more important than those other things. And the Supreme Buddha says, now you've just agreed with me. You've just supported the very thing that you came here to dispute. When this was said, the Brahmin student, Asalayana, sat silent and dismayed, with shoulders drooping and head down, glum, without response. So he knew he wasn't going to have a good time. Remember, he didn't want to be there in the first place. But he was obedient, and he went. And he tried, right? But he wasn't able. He wasn't able to prove his case. So knowing this, the Blessed One said to him, once, Asalayana, when 7 Brahmin seers were consulting together in leaf huts in the forest, this pernicious view arose in them. Brahmins are the highest caste, the very same view. So these 7 Brahmins were living in the forest, practicing austerities maybe, and they also had this same wrong view, that Brahmins were the highest, born from Brahma, and so on. Now the seer, Devala the dark, heard this. So this ascetic wasn't a Brahmin, but he was very, very powerful. And so he heard about this. Then he arranged his hair and beard, dressed in ochre-colored garments, put on stout sandals, and taking a staff made of gold, he appeared in the courtyard of the 7 Brahmin seers. So he went to visit them. Then, while walking up and down the courtyard of the 7 Brahmin seers, the seer Devala the dark spoke thus, where have those worthy Brahmin seers gone? Where have those worthy Brahmin seers gone? So, he's saying, what happened to those good Brahmins? Right? They've gotten this wrong view. They've started to develop this wrong view. Then the 7 Brahmin seers thought, who is walking up and down in the courtyard of the 7 Brahmin seers, like a village lout, speaking thus? Where have those worthy Brahmin seers gone? Where have those worthy Brahmin seers gone? Let us curse him. So this is something that you never hear, right, in the instruction of the Supreme Buddha. Go into the forest, do these wholesome things, but then when someone when someone makes you angry, curse them, right? But this is something that ascetics would do, right? They would develop these powers, and they would try and put curses on people that they didn't like. So then the 7 Brahmin seers cursed the seer Devala the dark thus, saying, be ashes, vile one, be ashes, vile one. But the more the 7 Brahmin seers cursed him, the more comely, beautiful, and handsome the seer Devala the dark became. So even though they tried to destroy him, the more they said this, the more beautiful he became, the more handsome he became. Then the 7 Brahmin seers thought, our asceticism is in vain, our holy life is fruitless. For formerly when we cursed anyone thus, "Be ashes, vile one, be ashes, vile one," he always became ashes. But the more we curse this one, the more comely, beautiful, and handsome he becomes. So then they start to doubt what it is that they've been doing in the forest there. Because previously, they could put a curse on someone. They could turn someone into ashes. These were the sorts of, right, the sorts of things that the Brahmins would learn, right? How to bless people, and also how to curse people. Even today, right? You can go to people and say, "This person, I want you to put a spell on them, to curse them, right? To have bad things happen to them." You can go to someone else, "I need you to take away this curse that's been put on me," right? This is the sort of thing that some people value, but we don't see that, right? We don't see that cursing in the Supreme Buddha's teaching. So this Devala, the dark, says to them, "Your asceticism is not in vain, sirs. Your holy life is not fruitless. But, sirs, put away your hatred towards me." And they say, "We have put away our hatred towards you, sir. Who are you?" And he asks them, "Have you heard of the seer Devala the Dark, sirs?" "Yes, sirs." And he says, "That's me. I'm Devala the Dark." Then the 7 Brahmin seers went to the seer Devala the Dark and paid homage to him. Then he said to them, "Sirs, I heard while the 7 Brahmin seers were dwelling in leaf huts in the forest, this pernicious view arose in them. Brahmins are the highest caste," and so on, the fairest caste, heirs of Brahma. And they say, "Yes, that's true. We have that view." And then he asks them, "But sirs, do you know if the mother who bore you went only with a Brahmin and never with a Brahmin? So can you really be sure that your father was a Brahmin?" And they say, "No, actually we can't be sure," right? They weren't around then. And then he asks, "But sir, do you know if your mother's mother, back to the 7th generation, went only with Brahmins and never with non-Brahmins?" Right? Because this is what the Brahmins claim, that they're pure, generation after generation. And he says, "Well, can you really be sure that none of these fathers were ever non-Brahmins?" They say, "No, we actually can't be sure." Then he asks, this is Devala the Dark, remember? This is the Supreme Buddha telling about this story that happened. He says, "But sirs, do you know if your father's father back to the 7th generation? No. But sirs, do you know if the father who begot you went only with a Brahmin woman, never with a non-Brahmin woman?" I say, "No, we don't know." "But sirs, do you know if your father's father, back to the 7th generation, went only with Brahmin women and never with non-Brahmin women? So can you really be sure that your family line is so pure?" And they say, "No, we can't be sure." And then he asks, "But sirs, do you know how the descent of an embryo comes about?" So, how does a human being come about in the womb, in the mother's womb? And they say, "Sir, we know how the descent of an embryo comes about. Here there is the union of mother and father, and the mother is in season, and the Gandhabba is present." So these are the 3 factors necessary. The coming together of the mother and the father, the mother has to be ready to have a child, and the Gandhabba has to be present. So this being that's going to take rebirth. Thus the descent of an embryo comes about through the union of these 3 things. So then Devala the Dark says, "Then sirs, do you know for sure whether that Gandhabba is a noble or a Brahmin or a merchant or a worker? He says, do you know this being that's about to be reborn? Are they a Brahmin or a noble, a worker, a merchant? Because they admit it takes these three things, that it's not just the mother and the father. And they say, Sir, we do not know for sure whether that Gandhabba is a noble or a Brahmin or a merchant or a worker. And then he replies, that being so, sirs, then what are you? And they say, that being so, sir, we do not know what we are. So they began by claiming that Brahmins were the best, but then they too had to admit, we don't even know if we're Brahmins, right? Let alone if Brahmins are the best. Now, Asalayana, this is the Supreme Buddha speaking. He says, now Asalayana, even those 7 Brahmin seers, on being pressed and questioned and cross-questioned by the seer Devala the Dark, on their own assertion about birth, were unable to support it. But how shall you, on being pressed and cross-questioned by me now on your assertion about birth, be able to support it? You who rely on the teacher's doctrines are not even fit to be their spoon holder, punna. So, he says, how can you expect to win an argument with me? Right? Even in the past, these Brahmins weren't able to argue with another ascetic. But now you're arguing with me, and there's no way you're going to win this argument. You've been defeated. He says, you rely on other teachers' teachings, that you're not even fit to be a slave for these Brahmins. But when Asalayana heard this, he was actually very, very happy. He said, magnificent Master Gotama, magnificent Master Gotama. Master Gotama has made the Dhamma clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright what had been overthrown, revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, or holding up a lamp in the dark for those with eyesight to see forms. So this is what he was like when he went to the Supreme Buddha. Right? He didn't understand the Dhamma. He didn't really understand about action, about the results of action, about what it takes to attain purity in this world. He had all these wrong views. But then he says, I go to Master Gotama for refuge, and to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of bhikkhus. From today, let Master Gotama remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. Sad, sad, sad. So today, we've had this excellent opportunity to learn this beautiful teaching from the Supreme Buddha, reminding us what's really important in this world. That it doesn't matter the family that we're born into, the country we're born into, right? What caste we're from. That it's what we do with our mind, what we do with our action, that determines the results that we experience. That all of us have this opportunity to practice loving kindness, to develop the mind, to develop concentration, to remove unwholesome things from the mind, to use energy to develop wholesome things with our mind. We never need to have any doubts about that. So having heard these beautiful teachings, may we always keep these teachings in mind. May we reflect on them wisely. May we put these teachings into practice. And through the power of this merit, may we one day realize the Four Noble Truths in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya.